Coming up on episode 96 of the Behind the Back podcast, the Sacramento Kings, 4-0 in Summer League. Nique Clifford looking awesome. Maxime Raynaud looking awesome. How do we feel about the Devin Carter experience? We will break that down. And then we pivot on over to the NFL, talk about Jauan Jennings needing a contract. I thought the Niners were supposed to have a peaceful offseason. What's going on here? We talk about that and whether or not we think Jauan will stay with the team. And then we pivot on to ESPN had this top 10 list and they just had to throw Jalen Hurts at 9th. So I spend 15 minutes arguing why he's going to be higher. And if you want to know his spot, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that too. All right. With that being said, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your host. I am Marcos Conan Negrón, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet Rets. Ben, how are you, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a long week so far at work, but other than that, man, it's been fun watching the Kings play some basketball again, and definitely been enjoying catching some of the highlights. So it's been cool.
Nice. I love that. So, like you guys got in the intro, if you heard, stuck around, we got some fun stuff to talk about. If this is your first time on the show, welcome to the Behind the Back podcast. We really appreciate all the love and support that we grow with you guys each and every single week. So let's get down to brass tacks. Like you mentioned, we were talking about Summer League. The Kings and the NBA are in the Las Vegas Summer League, and we have gone through four games now. The Kings have. And I think what we should do first is let's talk about real quick, just rehash 1 through 4 real quick, and then let's talk, and then we'll segue the conversation into what really stood out and who really stood out. So let's break down those games first, Ben. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so game one, that was the first quarter was the Maxime Raynaud show, and after one quarter, I'll tell you what, man, I was ready to hang his rafter up in the ceiling as a golden one, because that was a fun little exciting aspect of the offseason for the Kings, just knowing your guy kind of cashed out there. So at the end of the first quarter, Maxime had 13 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. So that was just 8 minutes of action, and we're calling him Mr. Impact at that point. Nique Clifford snaps in the fourth quarter and leads the Kings to a late game win with some huge buckets to seal the game. He had 11 points in the fourth on 4 of 7 shooting. So we got, first game, it was a good W, and it was a good showcase of our two, newest rookies that we were kind of the most excited about. So then we go into game 2, and we're kind of asking the question of is Devin Carter going to show up at any point? Because he's pretty lackluster. And then DC just explodes. Devin Carter posts 30 points, 8 rebounds, 3 steals on incredibly efficient shooting. So it was a great game. It was fun to watch Devin kind of, come out of his shell and wake up a little bit. Nique Clifford snags his first NBA career double-double, posting 19 points and 12 rebounds, while also tacking on 5 assists. We also saw some great defensive work, a time or two from Dylan Cardwell. That was about it for his summer league showcase. There wasn't much outside of that. Good defense, terrible offense, and that was kind of the issue that we had coming in. But Maxime also finished with 17 points, 5 rebounds, and a steal. So really good W there. Take it into game 3 against the Suns. Kings dominate defensively from the second quarter on. Nique was a force to be reckoned with. Raynaud was out with wrist soreness. So you kind of wondered what this team might look like. And at first, his impact or lack thereof was definitely showing, right? Because in the first 2 games, you see Raynaud, a lot of the offense initiated early on through him. And in this game 3, the Kings really had to, hunker down and figure out how they were going to, find an offensive identity in this one without their, star center on their squad. So it was interesting to see them kind of work through that. But Raynaud on the bench with that wrist soreness, that's a tongue twister. It showed his leadership. He was vocal on the bench. He was making an impact even without even being on the court. And that's something that really stood out to me, being one of those long tenured guys in college and talking about how he's just become this leader over time. It really showed in that game to me. So I loved that in game 3. And then game 4, I'm going to hand it off to you, Marcos, because I missed a lot of that. I had to catch the highlights, but I know you kind of caught some glimpses more than I did. So what'd you get out of this one?
Well, game 4, the purpose of this game was to see if we could advance into the next stage of the Summer League where we can actually compete for the title. And the reason it's kind of like the NBA Cup where we're going to have a lot of 4-0 teams, but it's going to be a matter of point differential. And the Kings needed a plus 15 point differential today in order to secure a guaranteed spot. They didn't happen, but they definitely played with that level of urgency today in this game. They played the Cavs. They won 94-86, so they got an 8-point differential. But this one was a kind of a clunker, a little bit inconsistent all the way through. But Nique Clifford found his groove again in the second half and definitely had a great fourth quarter where he was definitely stabilizing the team. Raynaud was back, and they had an interview with him on the sideline, which was really cool. And he, like you said, talked about his leadership over in his time in Stanford and how he wants to translate and bring that kind of energy here. And him and Nique Clifford talk about following that example and taking on the best assignment. And you can definitely see the effort that all these guys played with. They asked Raynaud, they're like, oh, why did you, normally if somebody gets injured in the summer league, they don't come back. That's the last we see them, even if it's a minor injury. They're like, why do you come back? And he's like, we're trying to win the summer league. We're trying to get those rings at the end. This is something that matters to us. And, something that, the coaches were preaching, we're trying to win this thing. And that's why all of us are still here. And I was like, that's really, that's what we want to see, that the culture of the Kings is starting to get established in the Scott Perry era. Like they're telling their players, DeMar DeRozan was there, Doug Christie was there, and Scott was there as well. So you have, you're trying to build that culture around these young guys, and these players, if they don't follow that example, then, it's out the door for them. So this game, they did a really good job closing out the Cavs. It was touch and go there. We had a good lead early on, and then we blew it in the third, and then it was nip and tuck the rest of the way. And Nique hit a couple big shots and really just imposed his will. And Devin Carter made a couple big plays. And the other guys, we'll talk about it in a second, but I was focused on more guys than others, but the other contributors on the team definitely kept them in this game. And it was a good overall game and a good way to finish. So even if we don't get that guaranteed spot, we're still 4-0. Another great summer league showing for the Kings, which that's probably the only 4-0 wins, the 4-game win streak we're going to see this season for the Kings, if we're being honest, whether it's on the summer league stage or in Sacramento. So let's talk about who really stuck out to you. Obviously, we've mentioned a few of these guys. Who really impressed you? What stood out to you in terms of maybe just what you saw from the team as in general, if anything stuck out? What were your early takeaways from the summer league?
I mean, the first one to me is not necessarily my number one guy, but it's something that is the number one missing aspect of this team in a lot of ways, and has been. And that was Maxime Raynaud's obvious leadership and vocal presence. And that to me is something that like I would love to see from him more as as he gets introduced to the vets on the team, some of these more tenured NBA guys. Like I would be ecstatic to see him kind of open up as more of a vocal kind of guy and see that kind of rub off on the rest of the team, because being vocal in a locker room is one thing, being vocal out on the floor is another thing. When you do both of those things extremely well, and you're, the kind of leader that you need to be a winning, successful basketball team, that right there brings an identity, not just to an organization, but to a court. And that's something that to me stood out in a lot of this, summer league was watching Maxime Raynaud, how he talks on the court, how he talks on the bench, how he talks in the locker room, his presence with the media. Like he's got a factor of leadership to him that I think this team is going to really be leaning on.
Absolutely. And I think when we look at some of the stats that he had, during summer league, 14.3 points per game. He looks like about 5 boards, 2 assists. He was shooting 53% from the field, only 30% from 3, but he wasn't afraid to take that shot. And I think that's something, again, his skill set is something that this team is desperately lacking. Someone with size who can do a little bit of everything. And on the defensive end, he was making his presence known. He had 3 blocks today as well. Definitely timing things right, just being at the right place. And I think he's aware of his own athletic limitations, but he uses his height really well. And I think that this was a great start for him. And it was nice seeing. I was a little worried about, can he handle the physicality of the next level? Consistently, they tried to get the switch where he was on a smaller guy and they were feeding him in the post. Like they were using him and saying, hey, go ahead and take your shot because we want to see what you can do. And he definitely looked comfortable. And I think there was times that, yes, the physicality you could definitely tell he was a little, he'll have some work to do there, but he definitely didn't look like he couldn't hang. And that was a welcome sight to see for Maxime.
Yeah, and I think with the NBA style, you really got to be exposed to it before you really build your body up in the way that kind of want it to be, right? So you see a lot of these guys. Giannis Antetokounmpo is probably the most obvious of examples you can make out of this scenario, but he gets to the NBA, he's a scrawny guy, really tall, has this athletic ability that it's really stands out. You're like, wow, if he can just build some muscle. Like this is a common phrase that we talk about with a lot of these players in the early stages of their career. If he can just build some muscle, kind of develop into his size a little bit more, he's going to be, a something to be reckoned with, right? Like a force to be reckoned with. And that's exactly like what I kind of see with Maxime Raynaud in this kind of stage in his obviously young career. Is there's a lot of him to still grow into his body. There's a lot of that scenario going on. There's a lot of he needs to, kind of get bodied around in his first year and bumped around and bruised a little bit so that he understands like, I got to put a little bit more muscle on or, play this style a little bit differently. So this is going to be a fun year. I'm curious, and we'll have that conversation as to how much playing time he gets this year. But I am excited to see kind of how he develops.
Yeah, and I think, and we're going to talk about Nique here in a second, but I do think one of the things is, yes, he still has so much room to grow in, but he is an older guy relative to other players in his draft class. But you can see the experience that he had in college kind of show and translate. Here he looked calm, he didn't look out of place. And you can definitely, he felt comfortable. I think there was a level of comfort with him when he felt like out of the gate he can hang with these guys. So I thought that was really good to see. So let's move on to Nique. I think he's too important to not talk about right now.
Yeah.
I think if you asked any Kings fans who pay attention to the summer league, and you don't have to even give them a box score, if they watch the games, watch the highlights, I think it was fairly obvious to see that there is a style, a pace, almost an effortless way that Nique plays the game. And like, yes, he's still a rookie, he still has a lot of polish to have, but he was flashing in a way that you're like, oh, there is something where he could truly be special here. And I think that whether it was his ability to take over after shooting poorly all night, his ability to just score 10 or 11 points in a row, or his ability to be the connector for this team, I was pleasantly surprised with his passing ability, and obviously he has a lot of assists. For the summer league, he won 18 and a half points per game, 6.5 boards, 5.5 assists. He was shooting 58% from the field and 53% from three. So he was on a heater here in Vegas. So what were your early impressions of Nique? Was it exceeding expectations? Were you hoping for something like this, or what were you anticipating with Nique?
I think he had definitely exceeded my expectations, but not due to any fault of his own. I mean, this was a rough season that we all just watched, right? So the vibes and everything was pretty down. Obviously, when Scott Perry worked a lot of the magic that he did on draft night and took the guys that he did, it was the immediate takeaways where it felt like these guys were steals at their spots. And so, when Scott Perry does the introductory press conference for both these guys, he talks about, especially with Nique, like how much of a two-way player, how much reliability there is for him on both ends of the floor. And so you kind of expect that, but I don't think we expected to see it, to the height that it was with Nique during these, past 4 games. He's made a case for himself to be NBA Summer League All First Team, and that's pretty wild, and it's fun. I just right before we started recording, Marcos, I looked up for giggles the the stat line of De'Aaron Fox in 2017 during his summer league. And he was having like 11 points and I think 3 assists and like 2 rebounds and 2 steals. So not quite the stat sheet that, Nique had, but there were high expectations when Fox was drafted. So it's interesting perspective wise to see from one season to the next and hype and no hype what you come to expect from these guys. But ultimately, like, did I expect it out of Nique to this level? No. Did I expect it out of him at some point? Yes, because I trust Scott Perry. I trust his opinion and everything that he's had to say about, Nique and about Maxime. I've at this point come to believe.
Yeah, when you look at if you just look over the stats for all of the players that they have on Summer League, like if you look through the first 20 names, they're all second year dudes. And when you really get down to the freshman class, Nique had one of the best performances of the freshman class in the Summer League. And I think he got used in a way that he's going to be used in a Kings uniform. Obviously, there was a lot more isolation for him. Those opportunities won't exist. But for what he does, the little things that he does within the game, the cutting hard, the ability to get all the rebounds because he's an incredible rebounder, and that shows his ability to get the ball moving and be able to fling the ball across court. And it's a quick reactive pass. Like he can attack the paint and also spray the ball out. Like he has the things that we're looking for in this offense and for this team on both sides of the ball. And I just think that this type of performance, elevates expectations now because, we're going to trick ourselves into thinking that he's going to be this insane rotation player when he has a lot of work to do. But I think that I think if there's anything that he showed is that he's going to be able to come in and actually make an impact right away if Doug is able to find a good spot for him minutes wise, and who he plays within the rotation will matter too. But I think he can make any lineup better. And I really liked what I saw from him in Summer League.
100%. I fully agree with that. So what was kind of your next takeaway?
I think the next important thing to talk about is our backup point guard situation. And I think, all eyes were on Devin Carter and his experience in being the main ball handler in the offense. And I think we got some mixed results from that this weekend. But I also think, when we look at Devin Summer as a whole so far, 16.5 points per game, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 45% shooting from the field, but 40% from three because he had that explosion in game 2. But one caveat I had, like Nique had a game where he had 5 turnovers. Devin also he had 4 turnovers in this past game. He had 2.5 turnovers throughout Summer League. So that's definitely something you can tell we're getting that mixed bag of like, he's making great plays. But in the end of game 4, he did this weird thing where we're up 7 and he's getting double teamed because they're pressuring him coming up the court. And they kind of trap him right before half court, but kind of at the edge, and he just flings the ball backwards. And I'm like, hey, dude, like you got to come up with a better decision than that, or just take the L on the jump ball, or without the turnover, some of that stuff. So you had moments where you're like, what are you doing? And you also had moments of like, this guy can hang and can score and can create for himself. And he also had some really nice passes where he had, I think in game 3, he had that behind the back pass to Isaac Jones where he was posted up. I thought that was nice. Like he's showing awareness. And I think that's where when we parse through the Summer League tape of Devin Carter, I think we got to take away the things that he's going to be able to do, the things that he can do, the things he did well, versus focusing on what he struggled in. Because I think this was a training ground for him to kind of just experiment, be a little bit like, try and be creative and try to operate as a point guard. So mixed bag. Happy that he got the big explosion in game 2. So that showed potential, that gave him the boost. And he also played well on defense this whole time. So the whole Summer League. So I think this was good. And the fact that he looked comfortable playing alongside Nique and Maxime was a really good sign as well. So far, that would kind of be my next main takeaway.
Yeah, I've found myself defending DC more than I expected to. And I've kind of been thinking about that, the last few weeks, especially here while Summer League's been going on. Because, I've talked to a lot of these Kings fans and they're like, we should absolutely be trading DC, in a deal for Kuminga or a deal for this or that, and it's like, we should absolutely be moving on from DC. And I'm like, well, why do you feel that way? And they're like, well, he's trash. And I'm like, no, really though, why do you feel that way? Well, he's not really living up to the expectation. We need somebody better than him. And I told him he's played like less than 400 minutes in NBA. Like he still really didn't have a rookie season.
Mm-hmm.
He was recovering from that shoulder surgery all year long. When he finally did come back to play, it was sore every other game. And so he was never really in true form, right? And aside from that, he didn't get a lot of training ground. He didn't get what he just got in the summer league to throw up shots and make a ton of mistakes. You know what I mean? Like he didn't get the exercises outside of realistic NBA play. So then when it came time for him to hit the floor, it was NBA time. And so I feel like, I've heard phrases like drinking out of a fire hydrant. I've heard phrases like, being thrown into a fire, right? This is a situation that Devin Carter, I think, is kind of falls in that same subject. He was not exposed to a good come up. He didn't have a great, rookie season. When he did get here, we didn't have a true point guard. The team was pretty messy. Like he was going to be the guy who saves the Kings. So I loved what I saw from Summer League Devin Carter. I think he took on a challenge of being a player that he, hasn't been touted to be throughout his young career. And he took on that challenge head on. He had great conversations with Scott Perry, who Scott Perry himself has challenged him to, he says he has the defensive capabilities already of his position. Now it's, how dedicated are you to building your offensive style? And that to me, like, that's what I'm focused on. And I've loved what I've seen from DC in Summer League. Would I still use him in a trade, depending if it's the right, package? Yeah, absolutely. But it's also a guy I'm more than happy to continue, trusting this process and seeing where this project goes, because I do think DC can and will be a really solid role player throughout his career.
I think if the conversation was if Devin Carter was backing up De'Aaron Fox right now on this roster, I don't think we'd be as worried, right? I don't think we'd be like, oh, well, the play from De'Aaron is so good. All we need is 8 good minutes from Devin Carter. But now with everything that's transpired with this team, there is that spotlight on like, hey, we don't have Dennis Schroeder's a nice point guard, but now because of that, we need to balance that out from the scoring on the back end. And I'm afraid, and that's the problem with some of these bench guys that like fans like for a second or are unsure of. They didn't get a real chance to see him last year, and he played. And again, he got thrown in there and played real minutes in real games that mattered towards a playoff run and made big plays. And so I think it's so easy to just say, oh, he's not that good. But like you said, he's played less than 40 games, so he has yet to play a full half of a season in the NBA. And now he's basically starting over he's being asked to do a new role. So it's basically like he's starting all over again. So this is going to be his first true season at point guard in the NBA. So I think that I still believe in Devin. I wanted him to draft him because I saw the vision of what Devin could be. And I think we need to be there. There needs to be a level of patience with Devin, because I think if we put too much pressure on him right away, we're just going to do to him what we did to Davion and basically just give up on him and thinking that he's a one-trick pony or kill his whole offense because everyone's just expecting him to be this offensive juggernaut, when in reality he was always a defensive specialist. Mm-hmm. So I think that Carter is already in that realm where he can be a defensive specialist. Now it's just, can his offense light it up? And he's shown ways where he's been able to light it up at way more than Davion ever showed during his tenure here, even in summer league and things like that. So I think there is a path for Devin.
I was just kind of thinking, and this is before we transitioned to my last little snip here, but I was just kind of thinking about the Kings for a second and what Devin Carter brings. Like, obviously great defense, right? The rebounding is another specialty. I'm thinking about now Nique and his rebounding. And now I'm thinking, like, is there a lineup, Marcos, that we could throw out there on the court for the Kings that we just consider, all Kings, all rebound, where it's Devin Carter, Nique Clifford, Keegan Murray at small forward, like...
We could throw Maxime in there.
We could put Maxime at the 4 and Domas at the 5, or vice, other way around. Like, there could be like an all Sacktown rebound team there where we
It's
get
true.
everything.
Yeah, there's now that's the thing. So okay. I wanna talk about just the last little guy last guy I want to mention is Isaac Jones. I thought he played really well.
Yeah.
Right. And you could definitely see his experience from the G League, last year playing against basically a similar level of talent. And he looks like a man amongst boys out there, and he looked really consistent. He was getting beat up a bit today
Hmm.
by the Cleveland guy, who was also having a really good summer league. Their best player was hitting him in the face a bunch of times. Um, and Isaac was just, staying on him and hustling and making big buckets and just staying around the ball. I think that's been Isaac's specialty during summer league, was just staying around the ball, always being in the right spot and just hustling. And I think for a guy of his size and his strength, that's also a skill set that we don't have. And I think that having a guy like him who also attacks the paint in a way that we, struggle to do as well. I think that was the takeaway for a lot of these guys was we were not afraid to attack the paint at all at any point in the summer league, which was really cool to see that we had the guys who were able to break down a defense, and Isaac can
Yeah.
just do that with his physical strength alone. So I was happy with Isaac too. I think that when we talk about the four guys that stood out, the four guys who could potentially play a part, I think that Isaac has to be thrown in there as well.
Yeah, I really like Isaac Jones. I think he's a really solid player. He's a great energy style player to have around. He reminds me of a number of players that have come and gone through Sacramento, um, and been some of those fan favorites, right? And that to me is like with Isaac especially. One of the biggest jumps I saw in this summer league was him actually using his body size a little bit more. That was something I feel like he struggled with, last year, even in the G League at times, was really using his full frame to his advantage. And I feel like there was a lot more plays this summer league where he utilized his body weight, his size, and his length a little bit more. And that kind of thing is something that you come to expect as guys, and start playing at this level and get more exposure. And I feel like we saw a little bit of that jump.
Absolutely. So now you mentioned, the hypothetical all rebounding lineup that we could have. I want to kind of use that as a jumping off point for, like, we saw these guys and they all impressed in summer league. So let's have this exercise where let's just say, you know what, the Kings we're so impressed with them that they announced that they're going to add these four guys to the rotation, right? So then we look at this team, and the question is now, how are we going to filter all these minutes, right? And I was thinking to myself too, I'm like, we had the lineup that we did last year when Levine came to town, and we had these lineups where DeMar was still playing 38 minutes, where Domas was still playing 38 minutes. And, I wonder that you could tell by the end where these older guys were kind of worn out. And I wonder if we could take the approach this year where we could say, hey, we believe we are, 9, 10, 11 men deep, and just throw you a rotation of young dudes and mix in the vets and the youth and try to give maybe, even if that means just taking like 5 or 6 more minutes away
Mm-hmm.
from Levine or Domas um and DeMar, just so then in the long run they get more rest and they're still out there long enough to make their impact, and they can stagger the minutes better to where come down to crunch time you can finish with the vets, the people, and they'll be fresher. So it's kind of where I'm wondering, like, do you think the Kings will find a way to do that this year, or do you think that Doug might, because this is going to be our full first year seeing Doug as a head coach, right? So we don't have that much information to go off of how he would approach things. But with this roster, it seems like now, especially compared to this time last year, that we potentially have more guys that we can throw out there. So do you think the Kings will throw more of these young guys out there this year, or do you think it is just going to be veteran heavy until the veterans are gone?
I think we're gonna see a mix throughout the season. And to me, I think a majority of this kind of lies around Doug Christie, because Doug to me strikes me, and I've seen at times as the kind of coach to play into, or play a player that just all out hustles. You know, if you're showing that you want to play, if you're showing that you've come to play today when the other guys on this team haven't, or this guy hasn't, Doug is the kind of coach to put that guy in, you know, in place of that guy who's not showing out. And to me, that I think is why I think we'll start to see some of these guys get a little more incorporated. I would not be surprised if they start the season off with some crazy lineups just to kind of feel what they've got out there. You know, we saw Mike Brown even do that during his time here in Sacramento, just kind of throw some wacky lineups out there and do it through the first, 65 games before really finding his solid rotation, right? But with Doug, I think you can definitely see a pretty deep rotation initially to get a feel for the kind of guys that he's got, and get a feel for what this team's kind of looking like from a chemistry perspective. But I think we will see a lot of the vets this season because Maxime obviously was leading the team night in and night out that he was out there in scoring, not the amount of points, but rather the amount of attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was taking a high clip of shots. He was doing it his last year in college as well. He's not going to be doing that in his first year in the NBA. That's not something you can expect. I think depending on the style or not the style, but depending on how much he's utilized, he might only be out there for 4 minutes, and you're not going to throw up 8 shots in 4 minutes. So from a utilization aspect, when the shot clock's going down, I think you see the vets a lot more. And I think if Dennis Schroeder is who, Scott Perry and this organization feel he is in the current, it should work really well with the vets who are out there, because he should be able to facilitate the offense and find a little bit of balance for a lot of that rotation.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a mix, and I think the preseason is going to be really huge in particular this year, just so Doug can see a few different lineups before before the games really start to matter. And it's important that these guys stay healthy. I think, that's going to be the other thing is, like, can these guys maintain their health so then they can get these minutes early on and get in the rotation. And it's just weird to think, because we now have just so many dudes that we can throw in and feel like, oh, a Keon would be good here. Oh, a Nique's going to be good here. And it's going to be really interesting to see what Doug does. But I think it's going to be crucial for our success if we want this team to, maybe in the long term, I should say, the long-term success of this team will be to get some of these guys, more minutes this year. And I don't think it's like at the expense of us winning. I think if it's not working at that time, then yeah, switch it out and do what you got to do to win the game. But I think that we have so much youth on the bench that we're just going to see a rotation, or maybe on back-to-backs, we're going to see, the younger guys more often. If the guys are tired earlier, we need a spark early on in the second night of a back-to-back type of thing. So it'll be interesting to see just how much the young guys get used. I hope they do. I think there is a place for all of them to fit within this team. And I think we have a good group of guys who are capable enough to give us 10 minutes a game off the bench. And I think that if we can develop a team like that, then that's kind of been the recipe for a lot of these teams lately. So who knows? Maybe we did, luck out in terms of the timing of it all. But obviously, veterans are still going to go. Whether that's Malik or DeMar remains to be seen. And that once that happens, that'll definitely set in motion the next, even if it's just one of them, like that'll set in motion enough minutes to go around for,
right,
at least a couple of these guys to get more of a run.
Yes, sir. So I think this is a good way to kind of end it, because the right now it's up in the air whether the Kings advance in the summer league or not. It's dependent on the point differential. Is that right, Marcos?
Yeah, the point differential. We'd have to look it up. We can probably, by the time this recording comes out, it might have already been announced that the Kings advanced. I don't know if we have to wait for all of the games to finish before they come up with that. Because I know the Timberwolves are the team that were right behind us. So I don't know what their score was or any of that. So, but the Kings won 4. They went 4-0. So even if they don't advance to that next stage, this could be a successful summer league. But I mean, I know the guys really want to win it, so it would be tough if it was just a point differential thing. But yeah, I think this is a good way to leave it for now. We'll see what happens. Hopefully they move on. But if not, this was a good summer league experience. And if they do move on, hopefully they're able to go all the way. They're going to be with, guys, teams are shutting down players, and the Kings will not be shutting down their guys. So they might be one of the best rosters going into that, into that next stage anyway. So it'll be exciting to see.
Yes, sir.
So let's pivot on. We're going to talk about some football. We have some news in the Niners camp that we got to address, and then we got to address a ranking of sorts that was that we find ridiculous. But before we do that, we will be right back after this break. All right, we are back to talk some NFL. We are going to pivot to the San Francisco 49ers because lo and behold, I think we're going to start with I don't want to say negative, but we're going to talk about the most interesting piece of news. Just when you thought you had a quiet, peaceful summer, all of your contracts were taken care of, all your, you got your situation sorted out, bam, Jauan Jennings. Hey, give me a new deal or trade me. What's going on? So I'll let you kind of take it from here. So describe what's going on with Jauan Jennings and the 49ers. And is this something to be worried about, or do you think that they're going to get this taken care of?
So Jauan Jennings, it was reported Monday, Adam Schefty. Monday morning, Jauan Jennings wants a new contract or a trade. And this was a little bit frustrating at first. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, this close to training camp, like we're just over a week at that point away from training camp. Like, rookies are reporting tomorrow. What? This is not what I want to see. And then I kind of thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, wow, what a great move by him. What a brilliant business decision for him to request this new contract or a trade. So let's kind of get into it. Multiple sources, it sounds like, have reported he wants to like cup Judy money, which is between that 15 to 17.5 mil a year. And that's kind of ranged around since then. If that's the case, that's doable. That's absolutely doable, in my opinion. Where the question lies is if it's doable in Jed York's eyes. And I say Jed York because he's the one controlling the money now. He's back on his back controlling his pocket a little bit more. So I have no doubt that the 49ers want to keep Jauan Jennings. Where I doubt is if they believe they can pay him enough for him to want to take that contract. And if not, does it make sense to give him more than, $15 million? Because you still have a massive Brandon Ayuk contract for a guy that, got 10 targets one time in his all-pro year. So this was a great timing thing for Jauan Jennings, because when I look around the wide receiver room right now, Marcos, I am concerned, my brother. Brandon Ayuk recovering from a torn ACL MCL. Timetable on that is unclear. Sounds like his recovery is going very well, as it has been reported on multiple times throughout this thing. He's kind of ahead of schedule. Matt Maiocco had reported last week that, there's a possibility of him coming back for week 1. I'd be extremely nervous about that. Please don't push my boy back like that. That's not, I think a timing thing is everything with these knee injuries, and trying to push somebody back like that can ultimately end their career. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more realistic around the week 5 mark.
Yeah. So put him on the pup list to start.
Yeah. So you don't have Brandon Ayuk for the first, 5 weeks of the season. Ricky Pearsall, he's looking to make a jump from a relatively disappointing rookie season. So he's not really established yet. And again, that rookie season had a lot of ups and downs due to a lot of different reasons, but I don't need to get into that more. Demarcus Robinson is facing a potential DUI suspension. Who knows the length of that? Can it be 3 games? Is there any games? How much is it? And that signing now doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's like, did you know that he had this going on? I do genuinely wonder if the 49ers realized there was, a potential DUI suspension that could be in play.
You can blame Philly for that, because it was after the Philly game where he got the DUI.
See, it's y'all's fault. It's always y'all's fault. Y'all took out Brock too because he couldn't hang. So that's Demarcus Robinson. Jacob Cowing, he's shown potential, but his frame is his frame, and it's not the best build for dominance, at least, from a wide receiver 1 or 2 standpoint. So Jauan Jennings is really the guy to start the season. Like, he was the security blanket for Brock Purdy all last year. And obviously, coming up just shy of the 1,000 yards, which was ridiculous when he got injured at
Mhm.
the end. I'm going to call him a 1,000-yard receiver because to me, he absolutely is that kind of a player. The question is, what does he look like for the 49ers? And that's what I wonder what the money's going to look like. If it was me, I would pay him. And depending on what this contract looks like, if it is like the 17.5 mil a year, Marcos, I could pretty much guarantee you the Niners are looking to move on from Brandon Ayuk at that point, because
Hmm.
having that much money in your wide receiver room for the kind of impact that it could potentially have and will have if everything goes right, that's a lot of money. Like, you can reevaluate that situation, and Shanahan kind of knows how to incorporate players like that. So depending on what that contract looks like is kind of where I'm going to lean with the Brandon Ayuk situation. But I'm not going to lie, I don't think like there would be good trade scenarios for Jauan Jennings right now. And I think, a lot of that is because everybody knows the Niners don't really have a ton of leverage. Like, the best, I know what you're doing. It's the scary Terry thing. And I love it. I love the idea. But the thing with that is, if at that point, do the Commanders feel like that's enough of a package? How many picks are we going to need to throw at that? Like, that's kind of where I'm. And what are those picks? Or is it a fourth rounder? Is it a fifth rounder? Like, that's what I'm wondering. So,
Mhm.
not a great timing from a Niners organization standpoint, but I got to hand it to him and his agent. They are playing this extremely clever and extremely smart, because that's exactly the time to attack this thing. Jauan Jennings is an awesome player. He's everything the 49ers want in their organization from a standpoint of work. He's a workhorse. He plays every single game that he can. He plays every single play that he can as hard as he can. Like, he was one of the biggest yards after catch guys in college. And that's not because he's just a, massive DK style build. Nah, dude, like, he is an all out effort style player. And he is one of my favorite players on the 49ers. But from a timing thing, like, it makes complete sense for him to do this. And especially right before training camp, which I'll finish my thing here with just saying, he expects and he is expected to be at training camp when it starts. If that's the case, even while this is going on, that's all the more reason to spend a little bit more on this guy, because he's everything you want to build your organization, around.
I think when talking about Jauan Jennings, I think if you do, like, even if it is the 17.5 million, I view it less as, oh, they're going to get rid of Brandon Ayuk, and more like, if Brandon Ayuk comes back healthy and is, anywhere close to the BA that we know and love, and Jauan Jennings is your number 2 receiver on a $17 million deal, that's one of the cheaper wide receiver 2 contracts you'll see in the league, for a guy who has shown that he can put up 1,000 yards in a season as the focal point. So I think that, I agree with you that Jauan provides an energy and kind of like a dog to him that, this team relies on and uses. And I think it's important. And I think he's important to the team. So I would be surprised if they didn't get a deal done with him, because I don't think what he's asking for is out of the realm of, like, is absurd. And I think there's a lot of teams that would pay him to be their wide receiver 2, or if need be, their, stopgap wide receiver 1 until they get better.
Right.
So I like, when I think about this, I think the Niners are going to get it done. Obviously, I don't know, what Jed really wants to do or how that's all going to work financially, but I just like, I know that the suddenness of it is kind of what sucks, because if he really did feel this way, why didn't he just do this like 2 weeks ago? The situation, it was the exact same. Nothing's changed. So it's like he could have done this a little bit ago, but I know from a business perspective, you want your leverage to be at its highest, and you want to force the team to make a deal soon. So like, I get that. And yeah, for the trade scenarios of it all too, like, yeah, for a scary Terry trade, you guys would have to give more than, like, Terry McLaurin is a wonderful, excellent receiver, and he would be your best receiver
I would
right
love it.
now. Absolutely, he'd be amazing. Like, great, totally cool. But like, I also think that you would have to give up, if you're doing Terry and Jauan, you would have to sacrifice like a 3rd round pick, and they'd only have to give up like a 6th or a 7th or something like
Right.
that. Like, would it really be worth that when you could still bank on getting another young receiver, or maybe another receiver opens up down the line who wants to come down that you guys can pay moving forward if you do want to eventually move off of Ayuk. So, this whole Jennings thing, I think he should stay. I would, if I'm making a bet, I think for the price, if the price that he's asking is what really is being reported, I think that's a no brainer. I think that's a deal that you would make as a team, and I think that would be a very team friendly deal if he made it happen that way.
Yeah, agreed. So I'm going to move on to the last little bit of Niners news, which is the most recent news. And it is a good one because only a select few NFL teams right now have signed their second round picks. And the 49ers are now, I believe, the official second, right?
Third.
So is the
Team.
third?
Mhm.
Okay. So Alfred Collins has agreed to a 4-year, $10.3 million deal, including $9 million of that guaranteed, which is where a lot of that snag is for these teams around the NFL is on the guaranteed monies, which is kind of a wild topic. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is a new thing. This is the first that we're really seeing it. So the league kind of doesn't know how to respond. It started with the Texans signing their wide receiver Jaden Higgins, I think is his name. I apologize if it's incorrect, but he was their second round pick, and he wanted fully guaranteed money, which no second round contract has ever been fully guaranteed before. So that was the first of its kind, and because of that, it led to every other second rounder outside of two people at the time to hold out and say we want more guaranteed, if not the fully guaranteed contract. And so this is now, right now we're just kind of dealing with it on the fly. But I think the long-term implications of this is all of a sudden second round picks just got much more expensive. The draft all of a sudden just became much more expensive, and second round picks just became that much more valuable. So this is definitely
Yeah.
this is an interesting, development. It's great that Alfred was able to get it signed. Obviously, basically a fully guaranteed contract. But you definitely, second round picks. The Eagles are in that situation with Makuba as well, where there was reports that he was signed, but apparently now he wants to get it changed up to where it's more guarantees. Which, listen, if that's the move that everyone's doing, that's fine. We're seeing weird things happen with contracts this year. Like the whole Shamar Stewart in Cincinnati thing is a weird thing for a first round pick. So I think this whole second round landscape thing is going to be a developing story that we don't realize the implications of it until a year or two down the line when this gets more complicated each and every year.
Well, and I think we're right at the cusp of the start of training camp for a lot of these teams, and I would not be surprised if like this deal with Alfred Collins and the 49ers, would trigger multiple second round signings because in a lot of ways, kind of alluding to what you said, the Niners kind of just set the bar. It's kind of like resetting a market. Well, you kind of reset the market for second round picks. There was a crazy thing going on with the guaranteed money and so on and so forth. The 49ers come out as one of the first teams to, kind of show what they're going to be doing with their second round pick. And now it's going to trigger more of this so you can kind of build an average around, what the cost for these second rounders are. But yeah, it's interesting, man. Like guaranteed money is massive, obviously. I mean, everybody and every player should be most concerned about, their guaranteed money. That Shamar Stewart thing is another really messy one. And that's something that like, you feel for the Bengals, but at the same time, they did it to themselves in a lot of ways. And then you look at Shamar and you're like, well, kind of like what you texted me earlier today. You're like, now it doesn't really depend so much what you do in college because your worth is going to always have this, negative effect now. Like you could be one of the best players in football at this point, but you're probably still at best like a second or third rounder just because of the whole situation that happens. So it's tough to see, but this is kind of where the NFL has been heading in a lot of ways. There's been some signs.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely interesting. We're gonna see what happens with the second round picks. But yeah, good job by Alfred for and the Niners for getting that taken care of. And it'll be interesting to see because Alfred was a earlier second round pick too. So I think that'll help kind of set that bar for the rest of those second rounders. So hopefully, like you said, hopefully it's a domino effect. Hopefully it goes quick. I think a lot of these guys, I think a lot of people weren't even aware that this was kind of going on. I don't think people were really aware that, oh, hey, why has my favorite team's second round pick not been signed yet? Like, wait, what's going on? I thought everything was all clear to go. I'm only hearing about this today. So it was definitely interesting. But there was another piece of news that you felt was important to share around the Niners camp. What is that?
I'll make it quick, but it is very exciting. Christian McCaffrey is a dad, and it's exciting. He welcomed with Olivia Culpo his wife of 1 year. They welcomed their first baby girl into the world. Her name is Colette Annalise McCaffrey. Obviously, the most important thing in this topic is a massive congratulations. It's always special to watch a couple, especially a young couple, turn into parents and go through the steps of parenthood. But my big thing, Marcos, is he's about to have them dad superpowers.
Yes.
And I'm just excited. I think he's gonna have a massive year now.
Hey, that's totally fair. You got a new motivation, a new purpose for life every day now, something to take care of, something to fight for even more. And now, the vision of, his daughter seeing him at the games is going to be, something that he gets to be motivated to be, a part of. So that's always good. Congratulations to McCaffrey and Olivia. That's wonderful for them. Wish them all the best. So let's talk about we're already 52 minutes in, so we're gonna try, but it involves our two favorite players, so it's gonna be really hard to restrain ourselves here. But we want to take a look at the top 10 quarterback list. ESPN put out, Jeremy Fowler put out this list that he researched through executives, GMs, coaches, and scouts within the NFL, anonymous, and they asked them about their quarterbacks and who they would put at their top 10. And this list is really interesting. But before we really get into the nitty gritty about it, let's just read it off real quick, Ben, for the audio listeners out there. We don't have it up on video, so we're just gonna read them off real quick, just 1 through 10, and I think it was 2 honorable mentions. So we'll just list them off, and then you and I are gonna decide if we think something might be off. A thing or two might be off with this list. So let's start with the list.
Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, Josh Allen. Number 3, Joe Burrow. Number 4, Lamar Jackson. Number 5, Jaden Daniels. Number 6, Matt Stafford. Number 7, Justin Herbert. Number 8, Jared Goff. Number 9, Jalen Hurts. And number 10, Baker Mayfield. Marcos, what's wrong? Why are you upset?
The biggest reason I'm upset is that the Super Bowl champion, the Super Bowl MVP, shouldn't be 9th. And I think that, listen, Jalen doesn't give a crap. Nick Sirianni will put this note in his locker and say, you're the 9th best QB, and, motivate him that way. But, Jalen, I guess for me, what's frustrating is how they're the ESPN. If you guys check out the article, it is on ESPN.com. They try to give their argument to why, their stats or this particular stat or this particular reason. And I wanted to really, when I discussed Jalen Hurts, I think that as unbiased as I can possibly be, I think I could make an argument for him that he is at the very best right now, the 4th best quarterback. But I can understand the argument if you want to put him as low as 6th. But I do not believe that he deserves to go any further than after Matt Stafford. Because I wonder when I think about how did they come up with these lists? And they said, it's a mixture of accolades, success, individual stats, but also individual awards or what other awards you've won. So, when we think of Mahomes, he's had middling seasons the past couple of years, but he has won the most out of any of these QBs that are in this top 10. He has the benefit of the doubt, right? A few more bad seasons, and this is going to be an interesting conversation with Mahomes, especially if, one guy like Hurts gets more Super Bowls and evens at it, something like that, right? But then you got Lamar Jackson. Lamar, I understand, right? Lamar, multiple time MVP, and Josh Allen too. Josh Allen got the MVP. Both of those guys put up insane regular season numbers and have come up short in the playoffs. That's been their thing. Mahomes has been their clipper. And then Joe Burrow's an interesting one because his stats are the best in the league, but most, passing yards, most passing touchdowns, most attempts, and very incredibly accurate. But then he also has just one run where he made it to the Super Bowl and has only been to the playoffs twice in his career, hasn't gotten an all pro, and hasn't won an MVP. So the accolades are a little ugh. And then they had Jaden Daniels at 5, right? Off
Yeah.
of one, listen, the best rookie season of all time. I will acknowledge that. That doesn't make you the 5th best quarterback. We did this last year with CJ Stroud, right? I think that Jaden is going to be one of those guys, but I think it's a bit premature to do it after just 1 year, right? Everybody always says it for our QBs. Oh, we need to see a little bit more, right? So why are we just automatically crowning him? Fine, whatever. Matt Stafford, I respect only because he got the Super Bowl, but part of me always thinks he was a Jaquiski Tart interception away from not even being there and then not even having it. And then his numbers are great, but he doesn't have any, MVPs, things like that. But Matt Stafford's a good quarterback. And then we get to Justin Herbert. And listen, their argument was that he has, and this is a fact, right? Stats don't lie. He has the most passing yards ever through the first 5 seasons of a career. So he has that. That's great. But that's it. He's had literally the 2 worst playoff games in NFL history, statistically 2 of the worst. He's only been he's been to the same number of playoff games that Jalen Hurts has been Super Bowls. And they don't win anything. And if they want to question like, oh, if you want to build your QB in a lab, Justin Herbert has all the traits. Sure, I get that. But then if you wonder like, they're like, oh, but he's such a good thrower of the football. If that's the case, then why did they give him the Jalen Hurts treatment last year under Jim Harbaugh? Like, listen, I guess it's a Jim Harbaugh system, but all he did last year was gas up Justin Herbert. And, when Justin Herbert gets into the biggest games in the playoffs, he's throwing multiple interceptions and he's choking the game away. That one pissed me off the most was the Justin Herbert. And I don't get how many more years of Justin Herbert being exactly the same player automatically justifies him as like a top 5, top 10 guy, right?
Hey man, that was our BTB 3rd team. Be careful.
It was.
Be careful.
And I get that. And what did that get us? I don't know, bro. So, and Jared Goff was an interesting one too, right? Like he's been having good regular seasons. They had, the Lions have been successful, but Jalen Hurts is 2-1 all time against him, and the Lions haven't done anything. They lost to you guys in the conference championship game, and they got waxed by Jaden Daniels last year. So it's like, how is Jared Goff, who hasn't been to a Super Bowl since his time with the Rams, so that was way back when, he hasn't been to the Super Bowl with the Lions, like, what has he done accolade-wise that says he is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts or impacts more than Jalen Hurts does? And Goff was also on an extremely stacked team comparable to the Eagles last year. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, the Lions are the team to beat. So then we get to Jalen. Yeah. So that's how I feel when I look at this list. I would move Jalen to 4th only because I think I would have it Mahomes, Allen. No, I would have it Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, Hurts. And I'm only giving it to Allen and Lamar purely because of the statistical numbers. They are better throwers of the quarterback. They do more. Like, I get that. And they have the individual accolades, right? But Jalen Hurts has beaten every single one of these guys and hasn't lost to one of them in over a year. So I don't understand. I guess what the list is like, why? How are they making these lists?
So and I feel you. So I'm gonna read you something that I think is a part of the reason why Hurts was ranked where he is. And I'm also gonna say before I read it, I'm not going on the side of Jalen is trash kind of thing. I don't think that he should be, ranked as low as he is on this. I think anywhere from, I can understand an argument from 4th. Anywhere from 4 to 6 seems like, and maybe, I don't know, like 4 to 6 seems the most right to me. To have him any lower than that after the season that he had, like that, to me seems crazy. But here's something that I did read that's interesting. And this is per Pro Football Focus, who I've utilized a lot of their stuff. They had Jalen Hurts ranked 50th in the top 50 NFL players. Okay. So take this with a grain of salt because their opinion of him isn't the best. Hurts was inconsistent at times during the Eagles' Super Bowl run, finishing with 22 big-time throws and 19 turnover-worthy plays across the regular season and playoffs. But when it mattered most, he delivered. He posted a 91.5 passing grade in the NFC Championship game and followed it up with a 78.7 grade in the Super Bowl, recording 4 big-time throws over those final 2 games. Hurts totaled 7 big-time throws against just 1 turnover-worthy penalty. So, to me, they almost, in a way, called their rating trash. Because in the regular season, Jalen kind of put the ball in some harm's ways at times and maybe didn't play to the fullest. And obviously a lot of that's, early on in the season, there was obviously some things that they need to work through. There was obviously, an adjustment to be made with Jalen learning his 8th offensive scheme in the amount of years he's been in the NFL. Right. So that's one thing for sure. But the fact that he pops in the playoffs and pops in the Super Bowl, and y'all can still sit here and say he's not like this, to me is similar in 2024. This same list, the same ESPN list, bro, 2024, and I'll read it to you in a second. But it didn't even have Brock Purdy on it. He wasn't on it. He was an honorable mention. But what was the argument? Well, there's too many good players around him that did their jobs. Well, so our team worked. That's what drives me nuts. So 2024 rankings. Here we go. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. So these rankings, and it's hilarious because we didn't even talk about this last year because I think I saw it, laughed, and forgot all about it. Because this is kind of an advice thing to you that I'm also saying out loud to myself and to Niners fans, Eagles fans. Our quarterbacks just simply are not going to get the love that we feel as a fan base or an organization they deserve. And that's just kind of the reality of good team football building. That's what our organizations have done. That's what the Eagles did to the best they possibly could last season. They built a roster that was built for a Super Bowl and nothing short thereof. And it's Jalen Hurts' fault that, he was one of the, factors into them winning, whether it's the main factor or not. That to me is mind-boggling that his ranking and how well he did goes down because of the production level of other players. And this is the argument that Niners fans also share.
Yeah, it's to say that was the whole argument against Brock Purdy was he has the cast of Avengers around him, as Nique Wright likes to say. But I don't know a quarterback that has succeeded in the NFL without talent around them. So
right.
It's such a weird thing because if they win, it's not because of either of our guys, but if they lose, it's only because of our guys. And it's very interesting that when they come up with these rankings, you want to build a quarterback, but isn't part of being a quarterback is, executing the play and being efficient and not being the reason that your team loses the game. I understand the force multiplier of it all, the guy who does more than what, a normal quarterback is asked for, like Lamar and Josh, they do shoulder more of the load, even though they gave Josh the Jalen Hurts treatment too by letting James Cook run the ball more. So I don't understand. I don't understand. There's two, they say they take the ball away from Jalen Hurts. They did that to guys on this list, Allen and Herbert, and Jordan Love too, who was an honorable mention. They say, they're too stacked with weapons. Well, Jared Goff has a ton of weapons. Mahomes had, when he was at his peak, it's not like he didn't have Tyreek Hill or prime Travis Kelce. I don't understand who Burrow had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Josh Allen was the most questionable, and his receiving core has not been good. Same with Lamar Jackson, which I think those two get a little bit more benefit of the doubt because they put up such good numbers with receivers. If they had the receivers our cores had when they went to the Super Bowl, God knows how well those two would have done. And I think that's still the argument, right? So I think that's what makes it frustrating is what are they prioritizing? Are they prioritizing how they view the quarterback now and what they think they're going to be? or are they viewing just traits? Are they just looking at stats? And because like there's a mixture of everything where like it doesn't make sense if you're putting. Well, they had Joe. Who did they have third? Was it what was it again? Was it
Third was
Mahomes?
Joe Burrow.
Exactly. So how do you have Joe Burrow in front of Lamar Jackson on this list when Lamar
Yeah,
has clearly done more and
right.
like Burrow is riding off the success of 2020 and Lamar has crushed him in their all-time matchups like 6-1. So I don't know where like I get Joe Burrow's an awesome quarterback, but doesn't him missing the playoffs when he has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase like mean something? Like I get his defense was bad. Jalen Hurts' defense was really bad in 2023, and they still made the playoffs with an 11-6 record. So it's not an excuse. Like, and so it's like I don't know. This list pissed me off because it's just like I don't understand what people prioritize when they make these lists, and they don't make it obvious. They just say, "Oh, it's from these guys," and we're just going to throw the names up here, and then they give these BS reasons why. Like, yeah, Justin Herbert had 20,000 yards, but he is the most. He has the like a 50% record. The stats are equally just normal. He hasn't done anything spectacular his entire career, and yet he's somehow ahead of Jalen Hurts. And then again, Jalen Hurts has beaten all of the guys in front of him. Literally, he's 3-0 against Matt Stafford, and people are like, Matt Stafford's better. And I'm like, I don't understand what we're talking about here. So and I get it. Winning is a team thing, but the QB matters. Jalen and Lamar Jackson are the two winningest, and Mahomes are the three highest percentage winners right now. So you have these guys winning as much as they do, and Lamar and Mahomes get all the credit in the world for it, and Jalen and Brock don't. So it was just frustrating to see. I didn't get mad at it at first until I heard that other people talking about it and the way they were talking about Jalen, and they tried to echo the same points. And then when people were like, "Oh, but he performed the best in the two games that mattered most," does that not matter? Oh, well, in week 15, nobody gives a crap about week 15. You only care about the games that get you to the Super Bowl. And I get that, like, if you want to take the stats, if you're only reviewing stats, then you can convince me, like, okay, yeah, Jalen doesn't put up the same number, so I can't give you an argument for why he'd be better than Joe Burrow. But if you're asking me who I would trust more to win me the Super Bowl, I would say Jalen, because he has consistently proven he's outplayed Patrick Mahomes twice in the Super Bowl better than any of these other dudes who have been trying to get out of Mahomes' shadows for years has been trying to do.
Yeah, and I feel you on all this. And like it was funny when you texted me and you were kind of blowing up about it. And I was just kind of sitting there laughing, and I was like, who was on 2024's list? Was Jalen even there? And I was like, where was Brock? Brock had to be like top 5, right? Because he's an MVP finalist last year. Nah, when I found out he wasn't top 10, he was an honorable mention. I think that to me got me more heated about Jalen Hurts. Like, because it was just it felt like more of a pile on. And it goes to show, like, obviously stats in 2024 didn't matter because Brock was one of the best statistical quarterbacks in the NFL in 2024. And he was an MVP finalist. And why he wasn't granted MVP is because he wasn't a first round pick. And in 2025, which is Jalen Hurts, who goes on to win the biggest game that you can in football, who goes on to not make really any mistakes in the playoffs, goes on to have these amazing playoff games and be this reliable force constantly from essentially week 5 throughout the rest of the season. That's brushed under a carpet for what reason? Yeah. Like, what are we talking about? Because Jalen got the job done and he didn't have the stats. Brock didn't have the job done, but he had the stats. So it's like, what are we? I don't, it drove me nuts. It pissed me off to an extent. Like, I can't wrap my head around it, but I'm also not going to like dig in or let it have that much control because realistically, Jalen brings a shit ton to this team on a night-to-night basis, a week-to-week basis. He's an ultimate leader. We talked about that last week. He's absolutely somebody you build your franchise around, and Brock is another one of those guys for the Niners. And that's why, like, as fans, we can look at these lists, we can just laugh about them, we can get pissed off about them, but ultimately, like, the season and how it plays out and as our quarterbacks continue to prove y'all wrong, that's what's going to do the talking.
Preach. Yeah, that's definitely, I think the funny part is we've gotten to this point, and I didn't think we were ever going to get to this point as we've done this podcast where our QBs and our situations are strikingly similar. Like it's pretty surprising. Like not their paths taken, but just the way they're talked about and perceived throughout the
Yeah.
league. It's like it couldn't be more equal, where it's like, oh, these guys, they're just bus riders along for the ride, while
Mm-hmm.
they're stacked rosters, just don't do anything dumb. And it's so frustrating to me. But it's true that it does add this element of, even though both of our teams, when you look at on paper, are stacked, and people would say, oh, well, they have the roster to beat anybody, they're still going to question us, and they're still going to feel like, oh, they're not as good as the Bills, they're not as good as the Ravens or the Chiefs because of the quarterbacks. Like, they're at a disadvantage. And then we get to, dust them in the Super Bowl and prove everyone wrong. And yeah, so I think that
Exactly.
we're going to find, that motivation will never leave for our teams. And I do think that, that does provide a level of like always holding yourself accountable, knowing that people are always going to be looking down, looking down your throat and just trying to figure out like how they can piss you off this time.
Did you get it out? Do you
Yeah.
feel better now?
I got, I needed to vent today, so this was good. It was interesting, bro. I'm listening to Colin Cowherd and stuff like that, like on the
Oh,
clips and stuff, bro, and I'm like,
yeah.
this is the same guy who said we wouldn't get into the red zone in the Super Bowl. And I was just like, this is so dumb, bro. So it's just funny listening to the conversation around Jalen Hurts. And I think that's why it just hurts, because he's my Pookie Bear, like Brock is yours. So it's like it's tough. So I thought it was an interesting article when I got a chance to just like look at it, and I'm like, no way, I would do this so much differently. But obviously,
Yeah.
we're opinion of two guys who just love the game. So I thought it would be funny to talk about.
Love it. So any final thoughts, Marcos?
No, I'm good. I think that, life's good. I got a car yesterday. I didn't mention that at the beginning. I ended up getting a car
Hey.
yesterday. So first car owning by
Woohoo.
myself. Yeah, it's a used car, but it's 33,000 miles, 2019 Honda Accord hybrid.
Ooh,
Stable, reliable
excellent.
vehicle. So that
We
happened
love it.
yesterday. So that was fun news. And then I've just been doing that, and I played a full season. I got through a full season of college football 26.
How are
So
you liking that? Is it good?
it's a good game. I think that the element of how they did the road to glory, which is your my career story basically. They start the high school, then you can do the whole selection process, and you can like fake out your schools and stuff like that. So you can say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna go here and lie and go somewhere else. I went to UCF because Arizona's guy was rated higher than me, and I didn't want to have to sit. So won a title with UCF. That was fun. The games are fun in the sense of like, if it feels like the game isn't glitching on you, because it still does feel pretty glitchy sometimes, like the big plays, the moments when you're reading stuff right, it's extremely satisfying. Like I engineered a game-winning, comeback drive to go to the national championship game off of a hit, a buzzer beater
Ooh.
a buzzer beater touchdown. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow, that was really sick. And
That's sick.
other games, it would have felt harder to do that. So it felt like, you're more in those moments in this game. And so it's pretty cool. I transferred to Arizona after winning the Natty, so that was fun. And
Hey.
so we'll see how that goes. But, I got to finish, I got to finish my thing before Madden comes out next month. And then I'll just, start my Madden career and stay on
So
that for the next 5 months.
yeah. So is college football glitchy? Is it buggy at all? Is it
Yeah, I
annoying?
would say that there's a lot of things that some, misblocking assignments, an interception here and there, and an insane catch here and there. You're like, there's no way that would have happened. Or like you're phasing through a guy, you think you're getting tackled, and not. It's weird. It's definitely a little buggy. I would say, um, yeah, I would say by the time they get everything patched up, I'm already going to be in Madden. So, it's going to take some time, but it's still a fun game for those who love, I grew up on the college football series, and then obviously they took that long break before reviving last year, but I was always on those games. And, for someone who grew up playing those games, it's always fun to play those games. But if you've never played it before, or you weren't really a fan of like Madden and things like that because you didn't like the gameplay, you definitely won't like the gameplay on this one. I don't think.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. I never played the NCAA games. I missed out on those. I think I went over to a buddy's house in like third grade or fourth grade, and we played it then. That was like my first time I played as the Gators, and I got crushed. That's all I remember because I was crashing out. But like Madden, bro. Like Madden drives me nuts. I love Madden because I feel like, especially when I create my own player, like I get to do my own thing. Like I always go to the Niners. I'm always like, nah, Brock, I got this. Like this is my turn. This is my time to shine. And it's always a great time, right? But then you kind of get into a rhythm and you notice things that shouldn't be happening. And Fred Warner jumps up 12 feet for an interception, and you're like, how the hell did he do that? Like it's the little things that drive me nuts. And same thing with like 2K. But that's, for the games that we grew up on, we put those things aside because we love that crap. So
Yep.
I totally get it.
Yeah, so fun time. But yeah, so outside of that, everything's been good. So, all right, y'all. So we will leave it here. This was episode 96 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. For all y'all watching on video, all of the links to our to our socials are up above. For all you audio listeners out there, the links to the descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, follow the show. We appreciate all the love and support. If you agree with the rankings of the quarterbacks, let us know where your favorite quarterback is and where they should be. If for all you Kings fans, who did you enjoy? Did you enjoy Nique's and Maxime's performances? Did you expect a little more out of Devin Carter? Let us know. A lot of fun stuff to talk about here in the coming weeks, especially as training camp ramps up. Will Jauan Jennings get signed? We'll see. Hopefully that's resolved by the time we get back next. So a lot of fun stuff to talk about, but I am Marcos Conan. Beside me here as always is
Ben the Jet Reds.
We love y'all. We will talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.